Perfect. Okay, great. Okay, so in just a few minutes, you're going to get to hear from our wonderful students. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's happening at the lab, why our lab, which does so much with document automation technology, as you heard David talking about, that was what powered all of our work during the pandemic, why we felt able and excited and really energized to present and share with you about generative AI. It seems that just a year and a half ago, ChatGPT burst onto the scene, and it was like it totally eclipsed all these other older technologies, like the ones we're such big fans of. But we do think that there is this perfect marriage out there between document automation, the rules-based systems, and generative AI. And while it may seem that there are just lots of pretty flowers inside the generative AI space, we know that sometimes they turn out to be monsters. Poor Stephen Schwartz was one of the people who led the way with this, discovering that generative AI was maybe not so great at writing accurate citations and legal briefs. But there are lots of other things to be concerned about as well. This is a really interesting study that showed, this is an older machine learning study here, but they wanted to predict whether someone's email was written by an atheist or a Christian. You got some really nice results in the training data, but if you zoom in here, you'll see it actually wasn't picking up on any of the contents of the email. It was just looking at the email address and whether it ended in .edu or something else. So we might get the right answer in our training and have for the totally wrong reason and not be able to rely on that. The other thing for us to be worried about is bias, and this can be deeply embedded into these systems. Years after this example has been studied and talked about, it's still there. If you open up ChatGPT now and ask this question, what do you think it will answer? The nurse. And if we change the pronoun, we're going to get the same answer, even though it's even less logical in this scenario, right? We don't know from whether the pronoun, whether it's referring to the nurse or the doctor. But ChatGPT has this really strong association between nurse and female and doctor and male. And this is true across many of the generative AI models. So if we want to get a little bit beyond that, if we want to build that pathway to having the safety of rules-based systems where we can hard code in what we want them to do, and some of the nice things we get out of generative AI, right? We get the ability to smooth over those rough edges. A lot of our older document automation systems, the guided interviews that we really do use quite a lot and work very well, they can be slow and hard for someone to get through because you have to think in advance of exactly how that person's going to navigate that system. Generative AI lets us make that experience easier and the user experience better. And we can do that safely. That's exactly what we're experimenting with here at the lab. Here's one of those approaches. You get lots of these questions in guided interviews. Sometimes they're big open-ended questions. This is a little bit of a cheat here. This is a much simpler one. And you have to decide, do I write 20 questions for this, or do I write one big open-ended one and let someone use their own words to describe what they want to do? And what we've done here is a little bit different. This is right inside our document automation platform, DocAssemble, that we use all the time. We've taken the user's answer to this open-ended question. This is just about whether they have a problem that their landlord needs to repair in the house. And we've given the ChatGPT API this rubric, these 3 points it's going to look for in their answer. If the answer does not have all 3 of these points, it'll keep asking follow-up questions until they do get a complete response. Something you can't do really well in the older rules-based systems. So here's the question. It's generated on the fly, totally dynamic question, tailored to the person's incomplete first answer. And then we can take that series of back and forths and transform it into a complete response. And the user obviously can edit and revise this, but there's no risk here of hallucinations, obviously. The other thing that we can do, and this is something that I have found through my years working in legal aid, is we can allow the person to tell their story in their own words and be more of an active listener. If you've ever done legal intake, you know that some of the people who come to you really need to unburden themselves of their story before you can start talking to them about what you really need to know. This is a very common experience that I have had. Sometimes I'm just need to listen for like 10 minutes maybe to someone talk before I can start asking. I might have a really nice script of things that will help me understand how to represent them well, but I can't get to that until I've finished listening. ChatGPT can be that active listener. And again, here we're not making a risk of it generating incorrect information. So I've given ChatGPT this list of 3 things I want to know: name, address, and movie from the person's response. They can talk about all kinds of irrelevant things if they want to. I can just nod and smile and listen and engage them. And I'm going to just pull out the things from that response that I need to know, and I won't ask them about it again from my script. So what we do here is the person's answer does have 2 things I need to know: a favorite movie and their address. And notice I can write this in a really flexible way. I don't have to say my favorite movie is The Blues Brothers. It knows in its model, it knows that Blues Brothers is a movie, and it knows that when someone says I live somewhere, that's an address. That one's not quite as fancy, I think, but it's still there. We could probably come up with some rules to maybe figure that one out. And we're going to fall back once it hasn't answered that last point, the user's name. We can fall back on our pre-written script, our user-tested, usability tested, well-engineered questions for that. We don't have to let it generate those on the fly. It would be kind of silly to have it generate a question like this on the fly. And it would lessen our ability to make sure we have a really good user experience. And then the person can review their answers, both the ones that come from our questions and the one that kind of were pulled out of their long narrative response. Can also do some really fun things like translating. And translating here can be very literal, translating from Spanish to English, or it can be just improving a little bit about the readability of the person's response, lowering the grade level from a 12th grade difficult grade level to a 6th grade more accessible one, improving the tone, like David's anger translator, which we saw on the screen for a second earlier. It could help improve someone's punctuation and grammar. It can make those kind of small tweaks, again, with the ability for the user to edit and revise the response. We're not just using these directly to help litigants. We're also using them to improve and speed up our own work. So here's an example of a real sample letter that came from the Attorney General here in Massachusetts. A lot of our work as automators is taking documents like this and turning them into templates. And here you see what I got by running this through. Well, it took like maybe 20 hours of work to get it to do this the right way. But once it's built, about 30 seconds and 10 cents worth of OpenAI's time to turn this sample letter into a template that can be used in our automation platforms. That's a task that can take 20, 30 minutes per page for a person, 20, 30 seconds for the AI to do it, and at a cost of 10 cents. We can take that draft document that's been prepared by the AI. We can, of course, edit, refine it, improve it. We're not sending this out directly to a person. And then we can create a draft automation from that. And you see here an example of some of the screens that OpenAI's API helped us generate. A mix of them are made by the AI tool, and some of them come from our pre-programmed library of questions. And we can edit, revise, refine these. We're not sending this out directly to the person. We have the ability to get it just right. We're really excited about this ability to speed up our work, to refine the user experience. And now I'm going to let you hear a little bit more from our students who are going to talk to you about some of the projects that they've done over the last year. Really excited about all the work that they've done. Students in the lab work in 2 different ways. The first way is we have about between 8 and 10 students every year who are part of our lit clinic. They represent clients that might be institutional ones like legal aid programs, courts, other kinds of nonprofit organizations. And we also have students who are called lit fellows. They meet with us the same exact way as the lit clinic students do. But they also have another job inside another substantive clinic, and they do traditional representation in that clinic, as well as innovation work that our lab helps facilitate. You're going to get to hear from both of those groups of students today. They're going to talk about their projects and groups. And we're going to start by hearing from Abbey and Claudia, who are going to talk about their work with usability testing. And I should tell you that one of our students is actually remote, based in Chicago, because The cool thing about our clinic is that it's a hybrid clinic.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Claudia, and well, I thought she would be there, but the person you will be hearing from is my project partner, Abbey, and today we're really excited to kick off the Lit Clinic project presentations for you all. Now, to get us started, I want you to imagine that you live in the... This is not... Oh, there we go. Hello. I want you to imagine that you live in the perfect apartment, except for the fact that it's absolutely infested with rodents. You don't have a moment's peace with all of these critters running up and down your apartment. So you reach out to your landlord to be able to, I'll grab this. Hello. You reach out to your landlord to see if they can help you, but they never respond. So you take to Google to figure out what form you need to fill out in order to get them to help when you are confronted by this form. Overwhelming, right? Okay. The Virginia's Access to Justice Commission, there we go. The Virginia's Access to Justice Commission actually identified this form as one of the most difficult for unrepresented litigants to fill out with little to no assistance. This is where usability testing comes in. So usability testing has three main goals. The first one is to identify any issues with the design. The second is to discover any opportunities to make the design better. And the third is to gain insight on your users' preferences and experiences. The way usability testing works is that a facilitator will provide a participant with a task to perform. As the task is being performed, the facilitator will observe and ask certain probing questions to gain more insight on their experience. Once the task is completed, the participant will provide the facilitator with feedback. This was our project. We were tasked with creating and designing the usability testing process and team for the Lit Lab, with the Virginia courts being our first client. They provided us with two different forms to test with a special interest in their tenant's assertion and complaint form. Now, from April 2015 to March 2016, there were 411 tenants assertion cases in the Virginia district courts. Our goal was to simulate the experience of these 411 tenants by providing our participants with a hypothetical scenario that they would use to fill out the form to the best of their abilities. These scenarios included fake addresses, lease details, type of relief sought, etc. Apart from these details, they were provided no additional instructions on how to complete the form, but were rather asked to narrate their experience as they went through it. And now I am going to pass it along to my lovely partner that you can officially see, I think, Abbey, to tell you all about our results and recommendations.
Yeah,
Thanks, Claudia. Today, we will be focusing on three main issues that were identified through our testing sessions. The first being the lack of guidance on which portions of the forms were the tenant's responsibility to fill out. Without any sort of explicit instructions or visual markings, participants didn't feel comfortable identifying which parts of the form were actually designed to be completed by court staff. We recommend removing the non-tenant sections of the form, which are blacked out in the photo on the left, and reorganizing the layout to consolidate all of these portions to appear after the section that is the tenant's responsibility. Alternatively, should the court want to leave the layout and the organization of the form as is, we suggest implementing some form of color coding, accompanied by direct language guiding the tenant on which parts to fill in based on their assigned color. The second problem raised by our testers was that even if they were able to identify that they had to complete a particular section on the form, there weren't any clear instructions on how to answer the prompts within that portion. We suggest providing more guidelines that illustrate the tenant's desired response. For example, testers struggled with the lack of specificity on the formatting of the dates, as you can see on the photos on the left-hand side of your screen. While this may seem like a small and therefore unnecessary change, this is important to address because this uncertainty on what should feel like the more straightforward components of the form ultimately decreases the tenant's overall confidence in their ability to complete the form accurately. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can actually see the responses from 2 participants who received the exact same scenario, but when they were met with confusion or frustration regarding what boxes to select, they varied in whether they selected all of the options in hopes of one sticking versus leaving all of the boxes blank. Finally, participants also raised concerns about the complexity of the vocabulary that was used throughout the form. They felt as though they didn't have the legal knowledge necessary in order to fully understand the legal jargon without an additional definition or more context. Therefore, we recommend minimizing the legalese and changing the form to be written in more plain language. For instance, by simplifying the language used to outline the prerequisite conditions, tenants would have a more clear understanding of whether they were eligible to even submit the form, which would ultimately help court staff by minimizing premature or incorrect filings.
So, what's left for us to do? Well, first things first, we are in the process of finalizing our testing summary report for the courts. This essentially means we're just compiling all of the results we got and making it into a beautiful, easy to read, wrapped in a pretty red bow report for the Virginia courts. Second steps after that, which would unfortunately fall out of our purview, but would make a great first project for next year's clinic members, would be to create the prototype for the new and improved form. We want to make sure that all the feedback we get is included when making these changes to the form. So that would be this step. And then last but not least, we have to test it again. We want to make sure that the changes we make are effective, and we can do that through usability testing. Our final thoughts and takeaways revolve around one major sentiment, which is that when creating and modifying forms like these, we want to make sure that we're helping the user in their legal process, not creating any more stress. In our case, while we performed the usability testing sessions with the tenant in mind, it's important to remember that the form has another user, which is the courts. The difficulty that unrepresented litigants have been having with these forms have been affecting court clerks by creating more work for them by having to assist in filling out the forms, as well as dealing with countless misfilings. Additionally, it has affected the court as a whole because it's delayed the legal process. By acknowledging and focusing on the difficulties that unrepresented litigants are having and working to simplify these forms to make them more accessible, we ensure that we serve the entire legal community, as accessibility to justice for all litigants serves the community as a whole. Thank you so much, and thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties.
As I should be blamed for all technical difficulties. I realized I should have done a share screen and this there, but it was just in the moment. So up next.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, my name is Sydney. This is my colleague Mario. We are the next duo of student presenters. We are Suffolk Lit Clinic members, and we're excited to talk to you today about our data exploration project, which involved analyzing a bunch of data from court forms with the goal of improving the readability of court forms across the United States. So if you've been following the Lit Lab's work for the past few years, or you've attended LitCon in the past, which if you have, thank you, you might know that the lab has been working for years to improve the readability of court forms. This started with the creation of the Form Explorer database, and then the creation of the readability assessment tool, Rate My PDF, and also scraping the web for massive amounts of court form data to analyze with the goal of making court forms better. Last year, students from the Lit Lab scraped the web far and wide for 24,000 court forms from 47 jurisdictions, and these forms were turned into a huge data set of the text of all of the court forms for Mario and I to analyze. And so, with the help of the students who gathered the forms and also the Lit Lab's years of work relating to readability, we picked up on the second leg of this court forms relay race, which began with the creation of the Form Explorer database, the gathering of the 24,000 forms, which put Mario and I in the position to explore all of this data to improve readability.
Early on in our work together, we set our finish line to be the simplification of court form language for the everyday user. And the problem with court forms today is that they're created by lawyers for lawyers. For example, Sydney, what if I told you that you had to seek judicial relief by petitioning the court for issuance of a temporary restraining order?
That is a little bit confusing. Do you mean that I should just ask the court for a temporary restraining order?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer yet.
So, what is readability in the court form context? We found this answer to be pretty simple. It's just how easy it is to read and understand the content of a court form. And this could be affected by a variety of factors like sentence structure, sentences per page, and importantly, which words are used in the form. A prominent method of assessing readability is the Dale-Chall method, which uses a list of the 3,000 most common words in the English language, and any words in a text that are not within this list are considered difficult words and contribute to the complexity score of a text. Another readability assessment method created by the lab is Rate My PDF, and it also incorporates the Dale-Chall method. It allows users to upload a PDF to its site and obtain a complexity index based on a variety of factors like use of gender-neutral terms, sentences per page, and any word in a PDF that is not within the Dale-Chall 3,000 most common word list is flagged as a difficult word, and the amount of difficult words in a PDF contribute to the complexity index that you see on the screen. And so we noticed a blind spot with these current methods of assessing readability. Words that are necessary and acceptable in the court form context are flagged as difficult. Words like signature, divorce, and suing are not within the Dale-Chall word list and contribute to a text difficulty index. And we realized that these words should be incorporated into the methods of assessing readability.
And as Sydney mentioned, we realized that our contribution to this readability relay race would be to develop a list of candidate words, and these candidate words should not increase the complexity of the readability score. But to do that, we needed to properly clean our data. And in order to clean the data, we needed to have the right tools. The tool that we used for our project was Python code used in Google Colab. By creating a program that created a candidate list of words based on their frequency and salience, we were able to develop a list of words that are important in the context of court forms, but should be used in everyday use of court forms. And because of that, the users must know these words, and they should not be considered overly complex or unreadable. And by creating this candidate list of court words, we're able to add them to the 3,000 most common English language words. And by doing that, we could create another option to determine readability when it comes to determining the complexity of court forms. And looking to the future, we hope to continue to analyze this data and pass on the work that we've done with our Python code and Google Colab to the next group of lit students so that they can further make insights on readability as to these court forms.
And as Mario said, we're passing on the baton to next year's Lit Clinic members. We hope that they can improve and refine this candidate court form word list that we've created through the use of Python and Colab, and use this new word list and automation in the future to improve the readability of court forms. In this relay, we think that slow and steady wins the race, and persistence is key. So while our work towards improving the readability of court forms might seem like a bit of progress, we hope that it can be instrumental in improving the readability of court forms in the future. Thank you all so much for listening to our project about data exploration.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriela Riveros. This is my colleague, Coleman Silver, and we're part of the Legal Innovation and Technology Clinic here at Suffolk Law. We're here to introduce our project, the Minnesota Form Automation. First, we'll start with a real-world scenario of an issue that our project deals with. Then we'll introduce our client, the work we've done for our client, and ultimately the future implications of our project. So imagine this scenario. You're the single parent of young Jason. You rarely speak with Jason's other parent as they don't wish to be a part of his life, but that means you work overtime to provide for Jason. This also means that you rarely have enough time to take Jason to his doctor's appointments, to pick him up from school, and otherwise sign important paperwork for him. Luckily, your best friend Audrey steps up and is more than willing to help you in your hardest times with Jason. But you're not exactly sure what you can do legally to give Audrey the power to pick him up from school, take him to his doctor's appointments, or sign important paperwork on your behalf without paying an outrageous attorney's fee that you can't afford. This is an issue that our client, Central Minnesota Legal Services, aims to help with. CMLS delivers civil legal aid to low-income individuals. Their mission is to increase access to justice, challenge inequities, and empower communities. They provide direct representation, and overall, they give community legal education. They cover a lot of civil legal services in areas ranging from employment law to consumer debt law and family law. Recently, they went through a data breach, and their former platform raise their prices to an unattainable amount for a legal aid service. So as a result, they turned to the Lit Clinic to help them. And this is where Coleman and I came in.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. So the previous program, as Gabby was mentioned, that the CMLS, Central Minnesota Legal Services, was using, and they were, again, using this for automated interviews, trying to help people fill out forms, had a major data breach and other issues. So they wanted to switch to a new program, and we helped them do that over the past several months, transitioning to DocAssemble. Now, why DocAssemble, you may ask? So first and foremost, DocAssemble provides a lot of control and ownership over forms. DocAssemble interviews are available on GitHub and other free and open source resources. So it really is a good collaborative effort. There's 8 different legal aid organizations that work in tandem with the law school here at Suffolk to present these interviews in an open source way. And it's safe. As we've mentioned a couple times now, the service that CMLS currently uses has had some major data breaches. That's really a non-issue with DocAssemble. So all these organizations working together can work, with confidence. It's also, of course, a great educational opportunity for students like myself and Gabby. We got to work with this great new form of legal technology and learn a little coding along the way. And we got to provide what's essentially a free service and resource for this legal aid organization. So it's really a community building, sort of fostering entity here that we've been able to build together. And on that note, it's always growing. The professors here at the Suffolk Lit Lab created DocAssemble, and they're always working to improve it. So it is, Quinten Steenhuis, thank you so much for all your work, and Professor Colarusso. So it really is an honor for us to work with this program and these communities to create an easy-to-use application. And it's easy to use in both the sense of us students and attorneys with little to no coding experience. We get to use this great program that basically creates code for us to create these automated interviews, and it's easy for the users themselves. It works on mobile devices, most any electronic device, so it really is a wonderful service to provide for an improvement in access to justice. So how does DocAssemble work? Those of you who know DocAssemble, this is a brief overview once again. For those who don't know, there's essentially a four-step process. First, you label a document, either in a PDF, Adobe form, or Word document. You take that labeled document, you run it through what's called the Weaver. That's what automatically generates your code. Then you take that code and work on it on the playground. It's essentially an interface to edit code. And then you have your final interview, which after some user testing, hopefully is what helps people fill out these forms with no legal helper paying for any sort of legal services. So in a little bit more detail, this is kind of what the labeling phase looks like. On the right side of the screen, you might see in these open sections, these little what we call variables. They have little squiggly parentheses around them. That's essentially telling the Weaver, which we're going to look at in a second, hey, this is where users are going to input information. Please put it here. And the Weaver automatically generates that code for us. This is what the Weaver looks like. It's awesome. You follow the step-by-step process on the left. You upload your document first. And by the end of it, it generates your code for you. So long as you follow the step-by-step process, in the end, you've got this wonderful YAML code. So this is the playground. This is where we edit the code. It's a really wonderful resource because if you look, you can see what those are familiar with it. Looks somewhat like Python. It's essentially a simplified version of code that we can work with and then tailor it to the user preferences and needs for each individual form. So once we complete the editing phase, we have our automated interview. So on the left side, you can see what this looks like on mobile. It's just asking the user the first step in this form, which is what's your name. On the right side, you can see how it looks on a computer PC. This is asking for the duration of a form. So we've selected less than a year, input a date. So it looks rather simple, but this is really a helpful way for people to fill these forms out. And this is what the form looks like. Just one example of many that we've created in terms of the users filled out the form via this automated interview. They haven't actually seen the form yet. This is the first time they've seen the form. They've just filled out an automated interview and it fills this out for them. So DocAssemble really helps us complete a few goals. First, to make the process as fast, easy, and effective as possible. For example, the DOPA form here in the middle, as you might be able to tell, has a duration clause. So you have to choose either let the delegation of authority last 1 year or sometime less than a year. And in the DocAssemble interview, if you choose less than a year, you have to put a date that's less than 1 year. So it mitigates any sort of chance for accidents or confusion. So our goals really have been met here with DocAssemble in terms of increasing access to justice. We really want to make it available to all people of any education background, reading abilities, and we do so via user testing. So back to our original scenario that Gabby was mentioning earlier. This is the final product that our automated interview would create that would give Audrey the power to help Jason and his family.
So back to our client, CMLS. So as a result of the development of these forms, people like Jason's mom can sift through processes they've never thought they'd be able to do before without paying an attorney. Our client can now not have to worry about any data breaches, cybersecurity attacks, and they can use this platform with peace. So now they're saving time and paving the way for easy-to-use forms. This is just the beginning of the potential of using this technology to help low-income individuals conquer legal processes. Overall, we're ecstatic to have been able to work on this project with CMLS, and we hope to see this project grow throughout the years. If you have any questions, here are our emails. Feel free to reach out to us.
Just a quick clarification. We built the assembly line, which sits on top of DocAssemble, which was developed by the amazing Jonathan Pyle. So just quick note.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackson. This is my clinic partner, Taylor. We're both 3Ls at Suffolk and members of the Lit Clinic. And our project this year has been to partner with the Massachusetts Appeals Court to create an online guided interview through DocAssemble for their new informal brief pilot program.
So the Lit Lab has had a long-standing relationship with the appeals court, dating back to whenever the pandemic was happening, back whenever the court was looking to make the court more accessible to pro se litigants by digitalizing many of their forms. And before the lab actually teamed up with the court, they'd actually taken a lot of massive steps by taking a lot of the physical forms and actually e-filing and making them accessible as an e-file, which just made the lab's job that much easier when we did eventually join up with them. And when Jackson and I joined the lab last fall, the court had created a lot of, with the lab, had created a lot of online guided interviews through DocAssemble for all of the appeals court forms, except for one, which is the newly launched informal brief pilot program. And the reason that they hadn't been able to do this interview yet was because the informal brief just did not exist yet.
Right, so the appeals court launched this program last year to exclusively allow self-represented individuals with a case on the court's panel docket to file a brief which does not strictly comply with the Massachusetts rules of appellate procedure like a typical brief. An informal brief differs from a typical appellate brief in that it does not require, for example, a table of contents, table of authorities, corporate disclosure statement, or summary of argument, and also does not need to comply with the standard rules regarding margins, fonts, and a certificate of compliance. This clears the way for self-represented individuals to have their case heard by a panel of judges when they would often otherwise either have their case delayed or dismissed due to a failure to comply with those requirements.
So the great thing about working directly with the court is that they have the ability to change and improve the process itself instead of just making the best out of an already existing process. And because of this ability, the court was able to deconstruct the maze of the formal brief for the self-representing litigants. They were able to open a door to a whole new process and, and a whole new way for these litigants to have a fighting chance in the appellate system. And we as clinic students have been so privileged to be able to work on the final roadmap for both the court and the real people interacting with these documents. So here is just a brief, wink, wink. Here's just a brief example of what a self-representing litigant would have to parse through prior to the informal brief program. It was full of jargon, confusing avenues, and ultimately the formal brief just kind of posed as an unnecessary bar to entry for litigants without lawyers. So they took it a step further. So here is the first page of what a pro se litigant actively has to parse through, which is still an amazing step from what they used to have to deal with. But, now, yeah, this is a huge step, but they're still expected to understand many of the languages, knowing where everything is, and it's just still a little more complicated than what I think we want pro se litigants to deal with. So with the lab's help, Jackson and I have been able to use DocAssemble, which our colleagues wonderfully explained, to create an online interview. And our goal through DocAssemble is to take it, once again, just a step further as a roadmap or a guide for users to follow to help make the process as approachable and as easy as we possibly can make it for them. And this up here is basically kind of what the code looks like for us. So we've been dealing with this, so that way the interview can actually end up looking something like this.
Right, so here's an example of what just one page in our interview actually looks like. Now, despite the court removing many of the formatting and procedural requirements, an informal brief is still a very complex document. So throughout our guided interview, we look to implement guidance and direction to assist users in filling out their brief properly. For example, here you can see that we highlight where the user can find their appeals court docket number on the notice of entry, as well as in what format it needs to be inputted to be accepted by the court. Now, it's also important for us to emphasize here that while we cannot give actual legal advice to the user, we can break the brief down into more manageable and easily understandable parts to make sure they fill out each portion of the brief correctly. Lastly, we hope that going forward, this interview is used to help further break down the barriers that exist for self-represented individuals who want to have their case heard by the appeals court. And we also think that this can serve as a great example for other courts to see how the legal process itself can be changed to help the court become more accessible to everyone.
Thank you all so much for your time and for listening to us. Jackson and I have loved getting to work directly with the appeals court. It's been such a wonderful experience. And if you guys have any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to Jackson or myself with the emails listed on the slide. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Super excited to be up here with you all. My name is Christopher Emrich. I'm a third-year law student here at Suffolk University Law School, and I am a certified student attorney in the Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Clinic. I also hold the position of Legal Innovation and Technology Fellow, along with my two colleagues here, Jessica Vandervort and Leah Marszalek. Between us, we advocate for and consult with clinical students and staff to promote access to justice initiatives. Thank you. Thank you. To promote access to justice initiatives in our individual clinics and beyond. This means that on top of the normal caseload of working in a law school clinic, we have also undertaken additional technology projects unique to each of our own clinics. It's been truly a pleasure to work with them this year, and I look forward to seeing their impact on the legal community post-grad. For over a decade, the Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Clinic has been working with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, helping to amend their rules of civil procedure, drafting criminal codes, and creating a comprehensive pro se user guidebook. Reflecting on the valuable contributions of past students, including a notable LitCon presentation by last year's Lit Fellow, it's clear that our current efforts are part of a larger relay race, each of us contributing to a leg of the journey. Over the last year, I have had the immense honor of working with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, also known as the People of the First Light, on a groundbreaking technology project. The metaphor of the People of the First Light is deeply profound, highlighting not only their geographic distinction as the first to witness the sunrise, but also symbolizing their pioneering and innovative spirit. The tribal court recognized systemic barriers to their citizens in accessing their legal system. Most notably, these issues were cost and complications with filing governmental forms. It's a problem not unlike those which we face in American courts, right? Those who need to access the systems the most are often at the greatest disadvantage to do so. And the tribe's solution was simple: use technology to make filing a civil complaint more accessible. They aimed to do this in a way that others could build upon and tailor to their own people and needs. It is this innovative spirit, it is this innovative approach that not only reflects a profound respect for others' tribal sovereignty, but one that also leverages modern technological advancements to serve their community's unique legal needs. And that's where I come in. As a law student, I am a mediocre coder. I came to law school with zero coding experience. I was a journalist at a newspaper in Detroit, Michigan before moving to Boston. But my dedication to combating the access to justice gap has led me down a path that has impacted me deeply. My commitment to serving underrepresented communities is demonstrated through innovative public interest legal work that directly impacts the Indigenous peoples living in Massachusetts, on whose ancestral lands our state's legal institutions stand. I have been honored to work with judges, lawyers, and clerks within the tribe to understand the complex legal problems the Wampanoags face and help flesh out solutions to these problems. The thoughtfulness of the Wampanoags is nothing short of inspiring. And the solution we landed on was a document automation tool for the tribe's court system. This tool automates the filing of civil complaints and fee waiver applications, making these processes more accessible and affordable to the tribe's citizens. What's new in our approach, compared to traditional methods, is the incorporation of this project as part of a strategic advancement towards full legal autonomy and digital sovereignty. This tool is developed in close collaboration with the tribe, ensuring it aligned with their legal framework, with their cultural values, and the specific needs of their community. This application uses plain language, it uses supplementary resources, and an easily navigable UI to ensure that anyone could use this application to file a civil complaint in Mashpee Tribal Court. Moreover, this project embraces the principle of open source development. By making the code for these tools available on platforms like GitHub, we've ensured that other sovereign nations can adapt and customize these resources to fit their own legal and cultural needs. Further, once this project goes live, it will be hosted on a server maintained by the tribe, further illustrating the importance of the Wampanoag's tribal sovereignty. The work with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe represents a pioneering effort in the use of legal technology to enhance judicial access for Indigenous peoples. As the People of the First Light, the Mashpee Wampanoag are leading the way in integrating technology with tribal sovereignty, setting a precedent for other tribes across the nation. This project stands as a testament to the power of collaboration, innovation, and respect for sovereignty in creating legal solutions that are both effective and culturally sensitive. In my final moments here, I would like to thank first and foremost the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe for their decades-long partnership with the Suffolk University Law School, as well as the Suffolk Lit Lab. I'd also like to thank Nicole Fredericks, Director of the Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Clinic, as well as David Colarusso and Quinten Steenhuis, co-directors of the Lit Lab here at Suffolk University. Their unwavering support has enabled me to learn and grow in substantial ways on this while working on this project. Thank you. I now have the pleasure of introducing Leah Marszalek. Leah is the Lit Fellow for the Health Law Clinic here at Suffolk University Law School. Let's give it up for Leah.
Good morning. My name is Leah Marszalek. I am the Lit Fellow out of the Health Law Clinic. Sorry, let me just put this slide up. We represent low-income individuals with mental and physical disabilities and/or their families in litigation and administrative matters, such as guardianship cases out of the probate and family court. Many people would assume that they would never need or be a guardian, but there are actually 1.5 million guardianships in the United States. Guardianships impact many families. Your mom or your uncle may be diagnosed with dementia, you yourself may get into an accident, or you may have a child that was born with a disability and now they're turning 18 years old. An adult guardianship is a legal process where the guardian is given permission to make decisions for an incapacitated adult, someone that's been clinically diagnosed with a condition that keeps them from being able to make or communicate decisions about their physical health, safety, or care. In order to get a guardianship, there are several forms that need to be filled out and third parties that need to be consulted with, such as social workers, psychiatrists, or physicians, and this process takes several months or even several years. However, once a guardianship is granted, the process is not over. Guardians are obligated to fill something out called an annual care plan report every year on the anniversary of the guardianship being granted. Keep in mind, again, that these guardianships may be enforced for the guardian's or incapacitated person's entire life. And this form plays a vital role in ensuring guardians are accountable and that those individuals are safe and protected. Unfortunately, there is no guidance or reminders sent by the probate court to guardians regarding their ongoing obligations. Guardians are left to navigate the murky waters of their guardianship without the court leaving them a life vest, float, or swimming instructions. My project this year was to streamline the process of filling out that annual care plan report through the Lit Lab's document assembly line tool, a tool that my colleagues talked about earlier in a Lit Lab context. However, this tool can also be used outside of the clinic, can be used in your firm by attorneys that are handling a pro bono case and maybe need a cost-effective and easy way to populate it. Or it can be provided to your prospective, current, or former clients that may be guardians. Through the Health Law Clinic, I've had the opportunity of sitting with clients to fill out this form and gain insights into its challenges. As lawyers, we understand legalese, we know where to look if there's ambiguities, and we know how to issue spot. However, for guardians who most likely have no legal background, these forms can be extremely overwhelming. This tool takes the guessing out of the process and it empowers guardians to stay on top of this responsibility. Some notable features include, first, that it is a free tool that will take less time to complete, and there is an ability to opt into reminders about the approaching filing date. Again, the probate court and even your former attorney who helped file the petition for guardianship in the first place will not remind you of these duties. Throughout the form, there are also pop-ups that provide definitions to unfamiliar terms, and additional context is provided for complex questions. For example, the annual care plan report simply asks if the individual is prescribed antipsychotic medications, but by checking yes to this, the guardian has no way of knowing the importance of that question and that they're now requiring an entirely new court process be added to their guardianship, something called a Rogers hearing, which means even more paperwork and yearly court appearances. Next, the interview is mildly worded. Again, no legal background is required, and there are instructions provided throughout the form, before you begin, throughout the form, and even at the end to tell you how you should file. Questions that are not applicable to the guardians are omitted so as to not cause confusion, and the end product is a populated form that just needs signatures. Lastly, and most importantly, I was very intentional in how I worded these questions while still ensuring the original intent. In an effort to humanize the process, I asked questions in a more personal way. For example, the individual with the guardianship is only and constantly referred to as the incapacitated person on the form, 26 references to be exact. I can only imagine how this could be demeaning to see over and over again. So I've coded every question to reference the individual by their name because they deserve to be defined by more than their disability. The clinic and Lit Lab are working hard to determine the best ways to provide this tool to guardians, whether that be at the law school, the courthouse, community centers, or healthcare professional offices that frequently help these families with guardianships. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to Jessica.
Good morning. Can you hear me all right? Perfect. So as Leah mentioned, my name is Jessica Vandervort, and I'm the Lit Fellow for the Accelerator to Practice program. You've heard about a lot of different projects today, and I want to encourage you that these projects do not disappear. Instead, one of the roles that we play in the Lit Lab is to continue in project upkeep and maintenance. Last year, you may have heard me talk about the court forms database that I had helped to work on for ADA coordinators, integrating them into use in our forms. This year, as students, we went back and we updated these databases. We checked to verify information on court form websites, checking the individual courts, and adding our JSON files lines like URL, so that in our court forms, users would have the URL for the court in question. We then update it to GitHub for easy use across all forms in the lab. We also audit the existing projects you have heard about. For instance, we run those DocAssemble interviews. We check for screens like this one, error, and we edit anything that's needed. These are just the ways that we ensure that our past and current projects are never eclipsed by new ones. In the Accelerator to Practice, I have had the opportunity to serve as the Lit Fellow this year. The Accelerator to Practice program is unique here at Suffolk. It's a 3-year program for students interested in small firm and solo practice. There's a focus on integrating law practice management and legal technology into our curriculum. And the capstone is the 3rd-year Accelerator Practice Clinic. I am really excited to share that this program I'm a part of has just been recognized by Bloomberg Law as a top innovator. In the practice, this 3rd-year clinic, we seek to represent tenants in housing discrimination matters. In Massachusetts, a shocking 92% of tenants in housing disputes are unrepresented when they go to court. This includes in eviction proceedings. Despite housing being such a critical part of daily life, there is currently no right to counsel in these matters in Massachusetts and in many states. So one of the other ways that we achieve access to justice in the clinic is by sending students once a month to Lawyer for a Day, a program at Boston Housing Court, where we provide some limited assistance representation to otherwise pro se legal tenants. As the legal tech for the clinic, I have had the opportunity to help with several projects, including streamlining the intake process, automating non-engagement letters, and translating our housing log tool into Spanish. Both the intake process and the non-engagement letters are in-house. They're inward focused, meaning that they affect our staff and our students. These are great examples of how you can take legal tech into the law firm space. In contrast, our housing log tool has been an external tool. As I stated, 92% of tenants in eviction matters are unrepresented. Often, judges will look to see if those tenants have sought other alternative forms of housing before granting a stay of eviction. In those terms, it is often hard for tenants to collect that information, to show that they have indeed searched for alternative housing. And so my predecessor in the Lit Lab helped this process by creating this real-world tool, the housing log tool. But it currently existed only in English. So this semester, I've worked using LLMs and document automation processes to translate it into Spanish. We are really excited to roll this out to legal aid organizations across the state. And this is just another example of how our projects are never eclipsed by new ones. Instead, we broaden the pan of users so that more people can be able to access justice. As Lit Fellows this year, Christopher, Leah, and I have all had the opportunity to see our tools impact real users. Through the Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Clinic, the Health Law Clinic, and the Accelerator to Practice Clinic, we have integrated technology into day-to-day resources to truly bring legal innovation and technology home. Thank you.
All right, we are very close to on schedule, which is always a great thing. I do want to give everyone a minute or two to get up, stretch their legs, maybe refill your coffee before we head into our AI panel. So let's, we were supposed to be back here in 3 minutes. Let's make that like 8 minutes, so we'll do 35. I don't know if there's ever a time that someone actually can do the no introduction is needed thing, but if there is such a time, Bob is probably the person to whom that applies. I have a strong suspicion that a lot of people are here because he made a post about it on LinkedIn, but I'll let him come up and discuss it. So just a little background. Bob, you wear so many different hats. I think editor-in-chief is the one that I think we talked about before for Law Sites blog. But I've known Bob now for a while. And I know a lot of people, they ask me, oh, how do I know what's going on? How should I, they're asking me, who should I be reading? What should I be following? And one of the things I always say is, I say, Bob Ambrogi is someone, do you know his work? And everyone's like, oh, yeah. And if they're not, they're like, oh, my goodness. So it just made sense to bring him together. I also, it's been a couple of these events. Bob hosted a panel discussion a few years ago at one of these, and it was excellent, and we just had to have him back. And so if, like I said, anyone could get by with no introduction needed, Bob Ambrogi.
You want me to use, does this work? Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is going to be the panel on AI in practice. And what we're going to do here is give you 4 demonstrations of practical applications of AI, real products that are out there in the market. And I'm going to introduce those in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to say, first of all, I want to just acknowledge this program, not just this program today, but what Suffolk has done in the area of tech and innovation. I don't think you can find a law school in the country that has been as innovative and leading edge as Suffolk has been in the area of technology and innovation. And David, Quinten, Sam, Dean Perlin, back there in the back of the room, Gabe, all deserve a really big round of applause for everything they've done. And Mark, you're part of it too, right? Mark Lauritsen. And the students who just did these presentations, really amazing work. And it's just great to see that you're having a really tangible, real impact on your communities. So, we've all been talking a lot about the impact of generative AI on the practice of law, on access to legal services. But it's kind of interesting to think about the fact that we're really kind of in the early stages of this. If this were a Red Sox game, we'd be in about the first inning. It's really just been, I think Quinten said about a year and a half since we got started talking about ChatGPT. But it's really, I mark it more by the release of Case Text Co-Counsel, which was the first real product that was developed specifically for the legal market using GPT-4. That came out just a year ago, 13 months ago to be precise, when it was revealed on national TV on Morning Joe, much to everybody's surprise. And there's still a lot of questions, I think, about what does this really all mean? What are the real practical implications for the day-to-day practice of law, for the delivery of legal services? And what concerns are there? What ethical concerns are there? What should we be concerned about hallucinations? So what we're going to do with these panelists today is give a hallucination-free, I think, demonstration of real applications that are working in the legal field. And we're going to do kind of 10 minutes each for products. And then we're going to sit down and have a little bit of a discussion for a while. And then we're going to have some questions based on that. So let me introduce the first today, and that's Devshi Mehrota. And Devshi is the founder of JusticeText. Devshi, come on up and tell us about JusticeText.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the introduction and thanks for having me here today. I'll echo everything that Bob said in his intro. It's incredible to see the culture of innovation that this university has fostered. I myself started JusticeText as a school project several years ago, and so I'm just excited to see what comes of all these incredible projects being incubated here. And so for today's session, in particular, we're really excited to be discussing how all these recent developments in AI are transforming the practice of law. And for me specifically, I'm personally really interested in how we can harness this technology to improve legal outcomes for the millions of low-income individuals who are prosecuted for crimes every single year. My name is Devshi, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of an organization called JusticeText. At JusticeText, we are creating police accountability software that uses AI to analyze thousands of hours of body cam footage, interrogation videos, jail calls, and I'd love to share just a little bit of background on how we got started building this company. In 2015, I left my hometown on the West Coast in California to attend school in Chicago. As I settled in, I grew to fall in love with the city, its history, and its people. But as I soon came to realize, Chicago is a pretty complicated place. It's a city in which a 17-year-old, unarmed, Black American boy by the name of Laquan McDonald was shot 16 times by a local police officer. And the dashcam recording of this incident was released just 3 months into my freshman year on campus. That officer only received 7 years as punishment, but without the dashcam video of the incident, there likely would have been no accountability at all. And as we all have seen, more and more police interactions are being caught on camera than ever before. Well over 50% of law enforcement agencies in this country have already rolled out body cams, and the typical police department captures tens of thousands of hours of footage every single year. As a society, we've invested over $150 million in rolling out this technology. But we failed to ask the question, how does this actually lead to greater accountability? What most people don't realize is that the current system to actually analyze this data is broken. A South Dakota public defender recently said that there was no way physically possible for him to review the sheer volume of footage that he receives. But reviewing this data is critical because it reveals information that is often left out of official police reports. It reveals information that could redirect people's lives before they experience the harms of incarceration. And so during my senior year in college, I reached out to my local public defender's office and told them I wanted to try and make a difference. Public defenders serve 80% of all criminal defendants in this country, but they are systemically underfunded, understaffed, and underestimated. According to a 2023 study, public defenders nationwide are regularly taking on 3 times the number of cases they can reasonably handle. And it's their clients who are suffering as a consequence. On any given day in this country, there are around 500,000 people who are being detained pre-trial. These individuals are legally innocent, but currently in jail because of a lack of resources, a lack of capacity within our public defender system. We wanted to see if AI could help increase the quality of legal representation for these individuals by helping their attorneys surface potentially exculpatory evidence across hours and hours of footage. And so we started building the first centralized infrastructure for cataloging, storing, analyzing, and sharing audio-video data within our justice system. Our software transcribes this footage in a matter of minutes, and we leverage AI to automatically summarize the video and generate a timeline of key events. As a public defender, I can now jump to the exact moment my client was administered a field sobriety test, Mirandized, or placed under arrest. Attorneys also use our software to decode a wide range of proprietary file types, which are often created by monopolistic jail call providers and body cam manufacturers within the space.
We started off as a small school project, and today I'm really excited to be serving over 50 public defender offices in places like Portland, Houston, and also right here in Massachusetts. I want to give a special shout out to the CIO of the Massachusetts Public Defender System, CPCS, who's here at LitCon today, over there, John Bartleson. John has been an absolutely incredible partner. I think I met him probably like first month on the job, and his just dedication and motivation to bringing the best tech available to support the work of low-income clients has been incredible. And our partnership was also recently featured by Mass Lawyers Weekly as an example of how innovation is driving decarceration. And I'm excited to continue that partnership. Last year, we processed over 15,000 hours of footage through JusticeText, which were used to dismiss charges and reduce sentences for countless defendants. Here's just one example. In Kentucky, a public defender secured an acquittal for a client that was facing 10 to 20 years in prison. During the trial, he realized that the opposing witnesses' statements contradicted what they had said in prior recorded interviews. He immediately used JusticeText to find those contradictions across hours of footage and was able to impeach the witness with their own words. He told us that because of our technology, this was the first time he felt like he was on a level field with the prosecution when stepping into trial. As one other example, a Wisconsin defense attorney recently used JusticeText to uncover evidence of serious police misconduct. After processing hours of body cam through our platform, she discovered that the lead detective had actually destroyed evidence favorable to her client. Not only did she secure an acquittal, but the court's decision urged the local police department to update their body cam policy to be in line with constitutional due process rights. In doing this work, I've realized that so many of the challenges in achieving universal access to justice have less to do with a lack of empathy within leadership and more to do with lack of resources. We currently have a criminal justice system in which it takes years for legislative wins to actually translate into new processes and new infrastructure on the ground. And I'm personally really optimistic about the potential for AI to automate the most time-consuming parts of attorneys' jobs and improve legal access as a result. I'm also really proud to have built a highly technical and diverse team that brings engineering experience from organizations like Google, Facebook, Microsoft. We've built JusticeText hand in hand with public defenders all across the country, and I'd love to show you just a quick demo of how the tool works. Okay, awesome. So this is JusticeText. It is a web platform, which means that we don't need to integrate with any existing tools or services. If a public defense agency decides they want to work with us, they just have to log in with an email and password and they're good to go. Let's say you're an attorney, you just got a huge data dump of body cam files, jail calls, whatever it may be. I don't know what's on this machine, so I'm just going to skip that part. But you can upload all of that content onto the platform pretty easily. And once a given piece of discovery is on our system, give it a couple minutes, you'll receive a notification that it's finished processing, finished transcribing, and then you can actually go in and take a look. Once you actually click on one of the files that has finished processing, you can review like a 5 to 10 sentence summary of the contents of that interaction. This can be particularly important when public defenders get data dumps of jail calls. Let's say their client was, detained for months on end, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of jail calls that they received a couple days before a court appearance. This, unfortunately, happens very regularly. They can then use the summary to quickly triage the pieces of discovery that they want to focus in on. What I'll do right now is go ahead and double click on one of the files that I already uploaded and give you a sense of what you actually see once you open up that editor page. And so one of the first things that I'll mention, and I guess this will tie into our conversation later on, is we are transcribing the audio stream, but you know, there are limitations to speech recognition technology. And so one of the things that we made a very intentional point to do was indicate at the very top of our screen how confident we are in the results of the transcript. Things like background noise, crosstalk, police sirens, they can all affect this accuracy. So we want to make sure that attorneys know that this is a work in progress the moment that they open a file. However, there have been incredible advancements in this technology itself, and so it can be a really, really helpful starting point. So let's say you're scrolling through, there's a section that seems to be of interest. Let's see, I can click over here. You can just click on that section of the video. Press play and jump directly to that portion.
What's your updated address?
I'm gonna need another unit here to stand by for FSTs in case K1 has to go.
And if for whatever reason I detected, you know, this interaction was problematic, I want to use it to impeach someone, I can go ahead and highlight that section. I'm just going to give it a name. And after a couple seconds, the attorney will have a short 10-second clip that they can use, admit as evidence into court.
All right, what's your updated address?
Another thing that a lot of public defenders actually use this platform to do is actually get a shareable link where you can just copy that snippet of the video and actually share it with the prosecutors. Oftentimes, the DAs also don't have bandwidth to be going through hours and hours of this footage, and many times defense attorneys are able to point out facts in the video that get the case dismissed outright. Another thing that I'll share really quick is we do use AI to automatically generate this timeline of key events. We look for things like Miranda warnings, field sobriety tests, moment of arrest, you know, consent for search, and we look out for moments in the transcript that might sound like one of those moments. And so it looks like I pulled out the walk and turn instructions over here. I can just click on it and jump directly to that portion. I can take a look if it seems to be right.
Take a series of small steps, turn around, take 9 hills.
If it is, I can go ahead and accept that insight. And then the last thing that I'll say, of course, you know, there's so many fascinating implications for generative AI within the legal system. You can use generative AI to interact with this video as well. And so if you wanted to ask things like, were any drugs or alcohol mentioned, you'll get a response right there. You can ask for, you know, a summary of events, things like that. I think there's a lot for us to continue to explore here as people try to draft, you know, direct examination questions, crosses, and, you know, what guardrails that we need to put in place as product builders to make sure that those things aren't misused. But all in all, I'm optimistic and excited to see how this tool can help public defenders. So yeah, that's everything from my end. Thank you. And I will pass it back to Bob.
Thanks so much, Devshi. All right, well, from where I sit as somebody who writes about legal tech, there's probably no bigger story over the last year than that of CaseText, honestly. CaseText, as I said, March 1st, they came out with co-counsel, March 1st, 2023. They had been given early access to GPT-4 by OpenAI and been able to work on developing this product for a number of months before releasing it. And as I say, it was really the first real tangible implementation of GPT-4 in the legal area. March 1st, they come out with that. But 3 months later, they're acquired by Thomson Reuters for $650 million. A few months after that, Thomson Reuters announces how it's deploying co-counsel across basically all of its products in the legal space and beyond the legal space even. So to give us a little taste of all of this, Jason Morris is here, senior software development engineer at a little startup called Thomson Reuters.
I think I'm going to have to go hands-free.
Okay, yeah,
I
can use this.
Is this going to work if I lean in a little bit? Okay, I see some nodding. That's great. Hi, everybody. I'm Jason. I'm going to give my little spiel about why I love Lit Lab and Suffolk. I was a lawyer who was interested in technology for a long time, and then I think it was a post that I saw that Bob did about a conference that was hosted by Sam, at which I met Dave, and he introduced me to the concept of computational law. Fast forward about a year, and I'm a master's student at the University of Alberta, taking a master's degree in computational law. Go work for Singapore for a year, and then work for the government of Canada for a couple of years, and then eventually get hired by CaseText just as they're being bought by Thomson Reuters. And then I get an invite from Quinten, who I have collaborated with in the past on DocAssemble projects. And he says, hey, would you be interested in coming out? And my boss says, oh, God, I love Suffolk. Yes, you're absolutely going. So I love you guys. I'm a big fan. The work being done here is fantastic. I also have to offer a little bit of a caveat. I know it's lawyery, but I'm not actually a co-counsel demo guy. Like, I feel bad because I have a lot of colleagues who are really good at what I am about to screw up for you. So please don't let that color your opinion of the product, but this is kind of my attempt at it. So, okay, we are up on the screen. So this is co-counsel, and it is a tool that is kind of like ChatGPT in the basics. It's a chat interface, but it's got a bunch of skills added into it that help you do different things. So let's start with telling co-counsel what we're interested in. There was a hearing last week in the Trump documents case where the parties responded to the judge's request for comment on proposed jury instructions. I'd like your help reviewing the responses. And so this is the interface. You just tell it what you're doing and you tell it what you need. And it's going to say, to assist you, et cetera, I need the filings. Okay, so what we can do is we can go into the upload, and because I've done this before, I can just grab the government response and Trump response and throw those in. And then co-counsel will realize that they're there and say, what do you want me to do? Tell me what each filer objected to in the judge's proposed instructions. And so what happens now is that co-counsel figures out that you probably want to use one of the many skills that are currently included in co-counsel called reviewed documents. And this is, you can see up here, reviewed documents is tagged as the skill that it's currently exercising. That sets you into a more kind of an interview style process, usually just one or two questions. And that will make sure that it's collecting the best possible information from you and then run that process in the background. So here, it's made a little bit of an error because these things are not perfect. Thought I might as well show you it's not going to work perfectly. The way that review document works is, if you can imagine a spreadsheet where the rows are your documents and the columns are your questions, right? So you give it a list of documents, you give it a list of questions, and it's going to answer each one of those questions for each one of those documents and fill out all the cells in that table for you, right? So what we want is really just one question. We want, what objections did the filing party raise to the proposal? So let's fix that and submit that. And so what's happening now is this is one question against two documents, but what you need to kind of imagine is you have been given 1,000 documents by the party opposite in a case, and there is a particular list of 7, interrogatories that you need to respond to, or what have you. This effect kind of multiplies very, very large, right? So you can deal with very, very large quantities of complex data this way. The files don't have to be small enough to fit into like a ChatGPT context window. In the background, co-counsel is dividing the PDFs out into chunks, dealing with the chunks, summarizing the chunks, recombining the summaries, and then combining that into an answer for you. So all of that you don't need to worry about. And the result is being dealt with in a way that you don't have to just trust the product, you can trust and verify. So, oh, this is still working. What percentage are we at here? 15. Okay, so just to demonstrate, while it is working on one of these skills, you can also continue using the chat interface for other things. So tell me a joke about Boston. This is always a nightmare. Why don't Bostonians mind cold winters? Because each flake of snow that falls is just another chance to say, this isn't as bad as the blizzard of 78. Okay, I'm gonna take it from the response in the room that this is actually not the worst joke that it's come up with. It's always a different one, but yeah, that's not too shabby. Is this still running? Yeah, okay. Oh, results are ready, great. So let's skip to that part. So when you're looking at the results, you get this table, documents on the left, questions across the top, and each square is going to give you the specific answer with regard to that specific document. And here, the filing party raised several objections: Presidential Records Act, personal presidential, et cetera, et cetera. And this is kind of the summary response that it's giving you to kind of explain the answer to that question in that document. But you don't have to take its word for it. It will also give you what its underlying thinking, quote unquote, was as to how it came to that answer. And each one of these paragraphs in the how I came to that answer part has got these links that are linked back to the original document. So the answer is there, and you have everything that you need to dig right down into the original core written material that the system used to get that answer. So trust but verify, right? Everything is secured that way. And then the other very cool thing is once you have done that, this becomes the answer becomes something that is kind of in the context for your conversation. And so it becomes a thing that co-counsel can use in additional skills. So we're going to say, please draft an email to Bob Ambrogi summarizing those two answers. And what this should do is it should trigger the draft correspondence skill. And the way that the draft correspondence skill is it basically helps you draft a good prompt for getting the AI to draft an email. So here we have a proposed prompt, and you can see it has included a bunch of stuff that it got from the answer, the personal versus presidential things. It's added all of that into the prompt, and you can go ahead and customize this, change it however you like. Just to demonstrate that that actually works, let's get rid of formal and informative and say goofy comedic and submit that request. And so now it's going to send that prompt and all of the background data for the answer that it got. And let's see, 20% complete. This is a little slower just right now because around middle of the day East Coast is when the system has the most demand on it, and so we're using a live version right now. While this is running, I'll just switch. Oh, Jesus, so fast. Okay, so let's switch and look at the results. We've got the email, the great legal kerfuffle of the year, jury instructions edition. Dear Bob, I hope this email finds you in the midst of a laugh, or at very least not in the midst of a legal quagmire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have a goofy comedic email about the responses to Judge Cannon's proposals. Trump's legal team donned in their court jester's attire. Wow, okay. Good stuff. And so let's just skip over to this file. This is, so the chats are kind of organized out, and you can organize your chats by client matter. You can load a bunch of data files and call that a database and then reuse that set of files across different skills. There's a bunch of skills. I'll just scroll up to the top here. If you ask it what it can do for you, it knows. So review contracts, policy compliance, summarizing, reviewing, generating timelines, which I'll show here in a second, response databases, legal research, drafting correspondence, and deposition questions. Some of these have only been in the system for about a month. New ones are on the way constantly. And let's just go down. One that people are very excited about is the timeline. And so this is an example of, we took the complaint that was filed by Twitter when Musk said that he didn't want to buy it anymore. And we fed it into CoCounsel and said, please create a timeline of events based on the content of this document. And you can see that it's read through the entire thing, pulled out anything that's associated with a date. If we scroll down far enough, I think it even adds time of day for some of the events. Yeah, you can see it's included the time of day on May 13th for certain tweets where that data was available. And this is just exceedingly helpful for people who are trying to get a grasp of a case that they've just been given a lot of documentation for. Having the ability to throw all of those files into CoCounsel and say, hey, develop a timeline and explain to me what's actually happened here. Go get a coffee. It's probably going to take about 10 minutes, depending on how many files it was, right? But then come back, and it has done for you in those 10 minutes what it would have taken a legal assistant 4 hours or longer to do. And potentially, you know, the CoCounsel doesn't get tired, right? CoCounsel's coffee doesn't wear off. So you've got a lot of opportunities to do things with a lot of data that it wouldn't have been possible to do before. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm Jason, and that's CoCounsel. Thanks very much.
All right, next up is a startup that is looking to use AI to democratize legal research. Is that a fair way to put it? And the name of the company is descrybe.ai. And before I introduce the speaker, I'm going to tell you two things about them. One is they are homegrown, Boston-bred startup. So that's a good thing. Also, just last week, they were nominated for a Webby Award. So they are currently in the running. There's a People's Choice vote, I think it's called. You can go to the Webbies and find them and vote for them and see if they can help them win. So here to tell us about descrybe.ai is the co-founder, Kara Peterson. You want this?
Okay. All right, let's see. Hi, everybody. Of course, I'm going to need help probably figuring out where my slides are. David, thank you. But of course, I have a Suffolk Law story just like everybody else, because all roads lead to Suffolk Law School. I was the communications director here around 2005, 2006, and the last conversation I had in this building about technology was when we were trying to decide, it was the associate deans and the dean and myself were talking about if we should go on Facebook or not. Right. So just think about if we knew then what we know now about social media and sort of how much it's changed the world. We did end up going on eventually, but there was a lot of risk aversion from the attorneys, of course. And I would argue that we are now at a time in technological change that's going to make the social media revolution look like nothing, right? AI is going to eclipse this incredibly. So here we are, we're at a time where we can maybe hopefully make some good choices. So again, my name's Kara Peterson, she, her pronouns. I am the co-founder of descrybe.ai. My co-founder / husband was not able to be here today, but he is watching online. So hi, Rich, out there in the world. So we are descrybe.ai, and we are, as Bob said, a legal research tool. So we are not lawyers, neither one of us are attorneys, but we started our journey by needing to do some research ourselves and wanting to actually understand some case law, and we very quickly found out how incredibly hard that is to do as sort of an average person. Everyone in this room knows that, but a lot of people who are not involved in the law don't think about this until they have to, right? So either if you're in a situation where you need to know something. So my husband, that's Rich there, he is is a programmer and he builds things all the time and he builds really cool things. So he decided to take the OpenAI summarization tool, which was new at the time. This was about a year ago in February. And he started to apply it to some of the things that he was interested in looking at. And then it just started to grow from there. And a few months later, he showed it to me and I said, okay, we really have got something amazing here. So I will be showing you a demo in a little bit. I don't think very many people in this room need to be told about the justice gap. My guess is everybody here is very familiar with this. So I won't belabor the point with looking at all of these different statistics. But to me, when we think about the AI revolution, probably the saddest thing that could happen is if we come out the other side and the well-served are just better served. Like that would be a really big waste of a technical innovation in a moment in history where we can actually start to make a difference and maybe start to close up some of these numbers. So one thing I use this for people who don't understand maybe how severe the justice gap problem is. So I talked to a lot of people about this, not always attorneys. So my Boston reference here is if you filled up Fenway Park with people who needed access to legal aid, so this is people below the poverty line, you would have 10 lawyers to serve them. So this is a crisis. But that's not the only part of the story, right? So there's the social justice, there's the legal justice aspect, but there's also this gigantic latent market, right? Which in any normal or sane market would be being filled with solutions, right? But that doesn't really happen the same way in the legal space, but AI is going to change this. So these are just some numbers you can see. There's a range, 80 to 92% of the market is not being served. And this is global. This isn't just in the United States, it's a global problem. And then you can see the growth in the market valuation over time. So there's some really good reasons to pay attention to this sector, not just because you want to make a difference in the world, which of course is the most important reason. This is a graphic I borrowed from one of the organizations we're members of. This is called the Above the Line Network, and they're looking at the people that are not covered by pro bono or legal aid and the people who are not covered by, the high $800+ an hour lawyers on the other side. So look at all those people who are uncovered and not being able to protect their legal rights. So this is where legal AI comes in, because as some of the other presenters have explained, it can do a lot of the processing that is very labor intensive in terms of brain power. And so we can find ways to change that and to have more tools available for more people. And if I had more time, I'd start to talk about the billable hour, but that'll have to be a different presentation. So describe, I'm not going to read this to you. This is all on our website, but basically I will show you how it works. It is a free and open access case law research tool. So I may need help getting to a website. Sorry. Thank you. Did you have it already up or you just need to go? Perfect. I'll just type it in. Thank you. Okay, so all you have to do is spell it right. It always helps. It's with an Y because we wanted to make it confusing, I guess. So, okay, so this is our website. It's super simple. All you have to do is go to the homepage. And you can go to, I'll scroll up. There's also a search section there if you prefer to use that. So I'll just do that just to make life easier, but you can do it straight from the homepage. And as you can see, we have 2.8 million summarized judicial opinions already in the database. We have the entire US state court system in here, and we are almost done with federal. And if I have time, I'll show you a little more of that. And we have the Supreme Court. So since we've been talking a lot about eviction and sort of landlord-tenant, let's just try something here. So how this works is you can use natural language or you can use legalese if you want, but of course most people don't speak legalese. So let's try something in natural language. Yes, I type. Okay, so my landlord kicked me out for no reason. Okay, so if you see the different ways you can search, you have a few options. You can sort by relevance, you can sort by most recent, and you can also sort by state. So let's just take a little look at Massachusetts, since that's where we are. And why don't we do by most relevant? And then go ahead and hit search. And as you can see, it's nearly instantaneous. At one point, we wanted to make it clear that it was actually doing the work as it was summarizing, or these are pre-summarized. So you can see that you get the result here. So what you're looking at here, this is an AI generated summary that is proprietary to the way we have built it. We do not use ChatGPT. We use OpenAI, a different part of OpenAI. So if you click on this, you will see something at the top that is called a describe abstract. This is kind of like a case brief. We have 1 million or so of these. We stopped processing them for a short time because they were pretty expensive. So we'll get back to those soon. But we have about 1 million of those. And so you can see what this is. I'm sure everyone's familiar with this type of presentation. And then you have the AI summarized opinion. And then I'm just going to scroll, sorry for the fast scrolling, but I just wanted you to see that the original opinion's at the bottom. My guess is I'm coming pretty close up to time, so let me just show you one other thing. And you can go in here right now and play around. There's no login, you don't need an email. We're trying to make this as open access and free as possible. So anything that's green means it's there. So we have all the states, and excuse the fast scroll, but I want to get down to the bottom. Green, 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 this has been slowly turning green over the past year. It's been taking a lot of process. Our servers are very sleepy at this point. But then you'll start to see what's the federal ones that are coming in, and then you'll see our most complete. We have, sorry, it's way down here. These will be coming over time. This is a very long list. Supreme Court. So we go all the way back to the beginning for the Supreme Court. So what's really fun about this is that you can use natural language, so it helps people are maybe interfacing, like if we ever get to the point where we have sort of legal aid workers out there in the world that aren't lawyers, interface with some of these rules. We are planning a whole bunch of other things that are going to lay on top of this. And it would be remiss of me to say that we couldn't be doing any of this without our partners at the Free Law Project. Jennifer's here. That's where our data comes from. It comes from Court Listener. And the first place we got our data from, although we then ended up switching, was from the Case Law Access Project out of Harvard. So I do have to make, a quick pitch for Access to Law as being the enabler for access to justice. So I think that's probably my time. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more presentation, and this is going to be the company Clearbrief. And I will say about Clearbrief that for a number of years, I've hosted a startup pitch competition at ABA Tech Show. And Jackie, you know what I'm going to say, but in all of those years of hosting that pitch competition, the highlight of that was when Jackie Schafer got up to do her pitch, because she sang the entire pitch, and it was wonderful. I don't think she's going to sing today, but Jackie Schafer, the founder and CEO of Clearbrief, is here all the way from the West Coast to tell you about what she does.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, so it was a parody of Can Anybody Find Me Somebody to Love by Queen, but it was Can Anybody Find Me Something to Cite? It was about the true painful struggle. So I'm Jackie Schafer, and
oh, you know what? I can pull it up actually. So I'm going to start with my slides over here. Oops. Let's see. See them up anymore. Oh, there we go. All right.
So yes, I'm the founder and CEO of Clearbrief, and I'm a career litigator. I started in big law in Paul Weiss, New York. I spent most of my career in government as an assistant attorney general in Alaska and Washington State, which in some ways is actually a lot like being at a small, understaffed firm. And so I definitely identify with my customers in that way. And I was also in-house counsel for a $3 billion national nonprofit where I actually worked with judges across the country. So all of these experiences gave me a lot of insight into, as a practitioner, the legal writing process. And also hearing from the judges about how frustrated, they were with their dockets and the amount of the volume of reading and writing they had to do. And so I decided to found Clearbrief in 2020. Probably the most formative thing that led me to starting the company was, I'll just share this quick story, where I was working on a pro bono case where I was representing a mother and her toddler. that they were claiming asylum. And, you know, we got to our final hearing, which was kind of like the last shot you have. I'd written a 50-page brief, I believe. And as soon as we walked in, the judge was very obviously biased against my client and just really disgusted with her, I guess, and visibly so because she was pregnant, and was just sort of making these different comments where as the lawyer, you get in there, you're like, we're screwed, you know, like this is a nightmare. But there was a moment where I pointed the judge to one of the pieces of evidence that I had submitted with the brief, which was a therapist's report, where the therapist said, yeah, this is one of the most traumatized people I've ever served. And the judge looked at that therapist report and he changed his mind and he believed my client. Even though she was sitting right there and we were, you know, telling him this, it was the evidence that changed his mind, and we won. And he granted them asylum. And it was an amazing, you know, moment in my career, but it was something that I deeply knew to be true, that the way that judges make decisions is on the evidence and it's on the writing. And so the way that Clearbrief works and sort of the big vision here is that we need to keep the evidence visible throughout the writing process. It sounds kind of simple, but it's harder than you would think. And Clearbrief very much lives in the real world of legal writing, where to make AI useful and technology useful, it has to interact with the millions of, you know, frustrating tasks and tools and, you know, limitations that we have in our offices where we're doing the writing. So my vision for the company, which has come to fruition, I founded the company in 2020. Fast forward to today, we are now used by hundreds of legal organizations across the country and actually now the world. We're being used internationally as well. We're growing really rapidly among the largest global law firms. We're used by state Supreme Courts. We're used by government agencies, the prosecutors and the defense offices. And we're actually also being used by in-house counsel, including Microsoft's legal team. That just blows my mind. I'm like, they're using my software. Like, this is crazy. And they're presenting on that at a wonderful conference that's happening later this month in the New York courts, how the Microsoft legal team is using Clearbrief. So Clearbrief is designed to be used in Microsoft Word, because that's where, like I said, that's where things get real for us. And the process is very collaborative when you're writing something, even at a small firm, right? They may have just one, you know, paralegal working at the firm. And when you get to a large firm, there may be, you know, 8 to 10 people working on a brief or a motion. In the courts, you have the clerks working with the judges. So Clearbrief is designed to be used throughout this process, all the way to filing the document. So the first step of using Clearbrief, it's a Microsoft Word add-in, and I'll show you in a second with a couple of video clips. You open up the Word add-in and you drag in your source documents. You can drag in an entire zipped folder. It'll just start processing everything. We also integrate now with iManage, with NetDocs, Relativity, Clio, MyCase, and we're adding several more integrations, hopefully this month actually, so that you can just copy in the documents. Now, the benefit of doing this is that Clearbrief automatically OCRs everything and makes it text searchable, and it adds on sort of a special layer. It's not just like using Adobe. We've done a lot of work to make sure that we can pick up Bates numbers the right way and figure out what's in those documents. All right, so we were actually the first ones to release a generative AI timeline, and I believe Bob even wrote about it. But this is one example of how Clearbrief can be used. You know what, why don't I switch over now to show you these videos. So, oh yeah, perfect. Okay. Oops. There we go. Oh, I think it's showing an ad here.
Yes, you're good at your job.
Well, not sure what to do about it. Let's mute this. And then, yeah, sorry. I was going to try to use my laptop here, but I can actually switch over to showing you while that ad is running, how you can use Clearbrief, for example, for some of the other AI tools. So here's a video that I created, and I'm just going to talk through this here. But so again, you start during the process, you drag in your source documents, and there were like hundreds of documents. We've had customers, upload hundreds of thousands of, documents into Clearbrief. And now I can analyze any Word document that I have open on my screen. Clearbrief parses it and will detect references to the law, yes, to cases, but also to the facts. So we are one of the only tools out there that will detect whenever there is a particular, for example, report of Robert Connolly. Clearbrief will detect that this is referencing a factual document. It will figure out which document, based on the things that you've uploaded, is likely to be that page. And then I can just confirm that. And it's enabling me to turn my Word doc into something that is hyperlinked for the writer. And as you'll see, you'll be able to share it for the reader as well. Some of the other tools that are super popular include the add fact site button. So let me sort of show you how that works. Sorry, clicking around a little bit here. So I can actually select any text in my Word document where I want to find evidence to prove it. So here there's a sentence about the claimants propose to construct and operate a huge quarry. And I just select that text and I'm asking Clearbrief to find across all of those, hundreds, I think there were like 700 uploaded documents here, the pages, and it will list them here and suggest specific pages that could help me prove that the claimants proposed this. And it's giving it a patented AI score. So here it's showing me, oh, here, this page is talking about the proposal for the quarry. And it's even highlighting in blue why it's suggesting this page. So that is really the thesis. I just want to pause here, that AI is only so useful as the lawyer understands why it's doing what it's doing. And also, you have to make it easy for the lawyer to be able to verify that what it's doing is accurate. Otherwise, lawyers will be too afraid to actually use it for real work in real practice. And we hear this all the time that from our customers, that they love being able to see right there the evidence. And then right within Word, they can do all of the site checking. So it will automatically parse the document and say, oh, this is a case. Here's the case. It will give it that patented score again. We recently announced in January that we are the first startup, I believe, that LexisNexis has chosen to partner with in this way, where if you are a Lexis subscriber, you can automatically see all the sources from Lexis displayed right in Word. And if, let's say, you're like, oh, Clearbrief is pointing out that this is not the right case, I misread this, you can click on that and be taken into Lexis to do your legal research. If you don't have Lexis, we automatically display the law from Fastcase. So we also have a partnership with Fastcase. The Free Law Project, we also use them. So it's sort of, a lot of the speakers today have highlighted the challenge of case law access is that, the coverage is very difficult. So we've done the work to automatically make that accessible. So the last step is that I can, click a button in Clearbrief, and it will create this link for me. This is a fun little cartoon of Justice Ginsburg and Scalia riding an elephant. So when I click that link in Word, Clearbrief has taken my document and turned it into a private website. Now I can share this now with the court, I can share it with my client, and every single citation is hyperlinked so that they can see the evidence behind my writing. So that just like that judge in the asylum hearing, instead of, asking them to believe what I'm saying, I'm showing them why I win. And it's really easy to share this securely. Clearbrief will also, like I was explaining before, it will analyze your cases. It will flag for you if you've messed up the blue booking or, basically your, mistakes that you may have made in your citation. It will spot, fake cases for you, or just simply flag that you need to take, a closer look. And then some of our newer generative AI tools, I mentioned the hyperlink timeline. You can check that video out if you want, if you just Google it on YouTube. But Clearbrief will instantly create a hyperlink timeline in Word where every single source is visible by clicking on it. And we also made a non-generative version of that, because in the real world, some firms are not ready for generative AI, and we get that. So we have a tool called Themes, where you can use the search and create a chart that is hyperlinked, that allows you to search across thousands of documents and hone in on just the issues that you care about, and create a chart that you can use for deposition prep, and more. So there's so much happening right now with generative AI and Clearbrief. We are really taking our direction from our customers. Our core platform is based around the writing and the document that they're working on. So that has just given rise to the most logical tools that they need to get it to a final product. And so, yeah, that's really, where we're headed with Clearbrief. And I want to thank everybody for having me today. Thanks so much.
All right, if the panelists can all come join me over here. Hopefully the mics are working.
There's a lot of mics.
All right, well, are these working? Can you hear us? I have lots of questions for the panelists, but given that we're going a little bit late, we probably got, we're supposed to end in about 5 minutes. David said we can go another 20 minutes or so. I wanted to just kind of start by throwing it out to you. Is there anybody out there who's been listening to these presentations and has a burning question that they really want to ask any of the panelists here, or in general to all of the panelists? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Dave Brown. Oh, got a mic. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Hi, my name is Dave Brown. I co-founded Support Plus Plus with my wife. The question that I have, it seems like ultimately this might come down to a battle of experts, one AI versus another AI. The AI for the defense and the AI for the prosecution. Across for the entire panel, what do you think that looks like for the future?
Battle of the AIs. Who's got a thought on that?
My first reaction is I don't think that it's really a battle of the AIs. I think it's still a battle of the lawyers. I think it's the people using it that are going to be battling. I do think that there's a bit of an arms race there, in the sense that you are going to want to be equipped with the best possible tools, but the AI is not going to solve the problem for you, right? It's still, we're at the point where it's the human's expertise that makes the tool useful. So I'm less concerned with that kind of like, the AIs competing with each other. I would be concerned from like an access to justice standpoint about the availability of this kind of technology across the scope of people who need that kind of help, right? That's something to worry about. But I think it's the people who are competing, not the tools.
Right, and to add to that, if you imagine, not to pick on Big Law, but Big Law can afford some of these really expensive tools, and they're going up against solo practitioners or people who have pro bono help. I mean, who's going to be able to afford the deeper tools, right, and the deeper analysis? It's pretty clear that the way it's setting up now, I mean, when companies are being bought for $650 million, it's obviously, people want to make money on these things. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a great risk for further exacerbating the justice gap with a two-tiered system. So the only way that's going to be avoided is if it's deliberately recognized.
Something I wanted to add, we actually had a question that this is also, there's a virtual component to this conference, and somebody had actually already sent in a question. Kara actually directed at Describe, asking about the accuracy of the summaries, and how do you know, or are you confident that the summaries being generated are accurate? But I think that raises a bigger question that everybody's been talking about a lot, is the tendency of generative AI to hallucinate, to make things up. I think Pablo from Casetext used to like to say, it just wants to please you. It just wants to give you the answer that makes you happy. So how do we know that the information or the results that we're getting from generative AI is in fact accurate, or what steps can we take to be sure of that? And Kara, I mean, how are you tackling it?
So that's a really good question. And I would say that a lot of the things you hear about, that people are putting in hallucinated cases, that's bad lawyering. That's not necessarily the AI's fault. I would just say there's always going to be lawyers who make mistakes. So our tool is different than ones that are based on a chatbot. So ours are not summarized on the fly. So there is if you see, we went through it pretty quickly, but there's a match score that shows the percentage of accuracy. So our tool doesn't hallucinate in the same way that other AI tools do, because everything is pre-summarized and it's not working on the fly. It's a very different process than what Lexis has, with where you're kind of typing in it at the same time and getting different answers. It's just a different approach. The chatbot model is much more prone to hallucination. And certainly if anyone's interested in learning more on the tech side about how that's working, we would be happy to talk to you about how we're doing it. We're very open about our systems.
I wanted to add something, which is, I think that the question is so broad, right? About how can we, trust AI? Are hallucinations a problem? You have to really ask the question in terms of like a specific implementation of AI. Otherwise, it's, you're not going to really learn, I think, and understand what the issues really are. So I would just say, no chatbot is going to be the same, right? There's all different ways of implementing chatbots. At Clearbrief, we've specifically chosen to build our products, for example, where it isn't open-ended for the user to just like choose their own adventure about, you can do anything in Clearbrief. No, you can only do specific things that we've designed the tool to do. And these are tasks we know most lawyers have to do. And so the way that we've implemented even the generative AI is that at every step, it is showing its work and it's showing you the source and it's highlighting to try to get you to understand it. So that's the practical way we've combated, hallucinations and that risk of hallucination. And I think that's really important to think about, because if lawyers are so afraid of hallucinations that they don't want to use any new tools, which we are seeing that, right, among some pockets of the profession, it's going to slow us down as an industry. So I think if we focus less on just generally talking about hallucination and fear, and focus more on what are we doing with the AI and how are we protecting this particular workflow from the risk of hallucination, that's a really good question.
Yeah, it's definitely true. It depends on what you're getting the AI to do. There are things that you can ask it for, like a funny email, where it is going to be more likely to just invent things, as opposed to asking it to summarize a long text that you've given it, where it's relatively unlikely to invent things in that context. So it's a part of what tasks do you ask it to do. In the co-counsel example, you can see how there's the chat interface and the skills are slightly different. Usually the skills are things that have security checks built into them. So there's like a hallucination checker, where if it's given you back something with a citation in it, it double checks that the citation is real before it lets you see the answer. So there's parts of it that you can automate the security. And then there are also things that you just have to get human beings to review the output and come up with. And there are ways that we're still learning how to use LLMs to help with the workflow of testing the output of LLMs. And so it's a growing field. It's only been around for about a year and a half. We're getting better at it as we go, but it's genuinely a lot of hard effort is put into making sure that it's not making those kinds of mistakes.
I'll also just echo what Jackie was saying in terms of defining, as the technology creators, we can do our part by defining the workflows that we can actually fact check and the workflows that can be more explainable, because information search and retrieval, I guess in the context of JusticeText, you can surface timestamps of every single answer that you're giving, make sure that it's not making up references that don't actually exist. But once we start getting into document generation, into drafting, that's when we start to kind of stray from that explainability. And so I think it's really cool how co-counsel kind of breaks that down into different skills as well, because I think certain skills are kind of more uncharted waters, and then you can get more feedback from your users as you continue to refine those.
And I think it needs to be said that as users of generative AI in law, there are still going to be remaining risks that the users need to be aware of and kind of trained to avoid in their workflow. So there is a part of this that you have to be, like, do AIs hallucinate? Yes. Do hammers crush fingers? Yes, occasionally, but we use them anyway, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and products that are being designed specifically for the legal profession are building in that explainability, basically. I mean, when you look at Westlaw is deploying legal research, not just co-counsel, or LexisNexis or the VLex legal research platforms. They're not only using generative AI to quickly give you an answer, but they are also giving you the documents that support that answer with specific citation to where in the document it provides the basis for that answer. So you can trust but verify, as they say. And as Kara said, all of the examples in which there have been legal professionals who've gotten in trouble, or pro se people who've gotten in trouble by relying on ChatGPT to generate legal research, is all a matter of not bothering to verify that these cases were in fact real, even in cases where some of them were, Smith v. Jones or ABC Corporation versus XYZ Corporation with made up citations. So yeah, you still have to do the lawyering part of it, and that's really critical. Mark.
Getting my steps. Thank you. I know we're all astonished by how much these systems can do, but I'm curious, what's at the top of your list for things that they can't yet do that good lawyers do?
Good question. What can't they do?
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is understanding large contexts. So I was in our demonstration, the large files get broken down into pieces and summarized in pieces. And part of the reason for that is because of the technical limitations of the LLM models. That has a side effect in terms of reasoning, that it's not going to be as good at connecting pieces of information that are in the first chunk and to the last chunk, because those were summarized separately. So things where having a large quantity of information kind of in its memory at the same time in order to be able to find the important patterns, it's still not terribly good at that, although that is changing. Just in the last month or so, there have been signs that what we can expect from the context window might be 10x in a number of months. The other thing is it's not fantastically good at certain kinds of logical reasoning. It's not the kinds of analogies that lawyers are called on to draw from one case that is about a particular thing, but the principle is analogous to what the same principle perhaps ought to be in another situation. It doesn't have enough context about the real world in order to find those analogies and apply them. So that's a couple of things at top of mind.
Also, oh, go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, I just wanted to bring in the human element as well, which is a huge, anyone who consumes legal services, right? As a company, we have outside counsel. And the most important thing that I'm looking for is that there is a, consoling, smart, capable person who is filtering all the information and helping me, understand what I need to know. That will not go away. And in fact, AI is actually a tool to help you be even better at that and, surface that information quicker for your clients. But nothing is going to replace that human who's, in charge of the whole situation. And the same thing, goes for oral argument, for example. That's your chance to connect with the humans making that decision. And, like in the story I shared, surface that piece of evidence that, you think might make a difference. Reading the cues in the room. Technology can do a lot of things, but those are going to become even more important, I think.
Yeah, and one thing I would say about the what we were just talking about, sort of the contextual and creating connections between different parts of the law. That's one thing that's really interesting about Describe is it actually can do that. It's what one computational law expert called, it's really good at surfacing the shape of the law because it's all in there and we have so much case law summarized. It actually can do contextual searches where you may search for a certain word or a certain phrase or a certain aspect of the law, and it will give you things that are related that you would have never thought about. So that's one of the things that I think some of the models are leaning in towards, and it has to do with sort of how AI works. So it's pretty cool. I think it's coming.
And then one last thing that I'll add, kind of building upon the human element. I spend a lot of time talking to public defenders who are probably some of the most experienced trial lawyers in this country. And it just surprises me learning about how much knowledge they hold in their brain about this judge's temperament is like this. This time of day isn't going to be so good. Oh, that private criminal defense attorney, he tends to say things that are off color so often. And so many of the legal arguments, the legitimate legal advice that they give to their clients are actually, a compilation of all those different things of their emotional intelligence. And so I think the goal of these AI tools is for creating more and more space for lawyers to maximize that capacity that they hold, that's so unique, and less so on the rote work.
Yeah, you have a question?
There was just a question online. I think this is probably for JusticeText about whether or not, or maybe for anyone, if they've seen these tools be useful for journalists to help them more objectively investigate and analyze criminal or civil cases, and if you could provide any specifics.
100%. I think speech recognition technology at its core has been incredibly valuable for journalists. We've had folks reach out to us who are doing their own investigative reporting on police misconduct. They get, it's really hard, first of all, for members of the public to get access to body cam footage, to, interrogations, jail calls, things like that in the first place. And unfortunately, when a lot of that data is shared, it's not shared in very usable formats. It's shared in, crazy file formats. It's shared in ways that may not be labeled. And so I think 100% AI technology can be really powerful in helping civil society kind of serve as that check.
And you mentioned jail calls again, and there was a question on that, if you could explain what that was for some of the audience.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, I don't know if many people in the general public realize, but once you are detained, every single interaction that you have with, like a family member, a friend, whoever it may be, is being recorded. And even though oftentimes it says very explicitly your, conversation will be monitored, oftentimes clients end up disclosing a lot of facts of the case. And so that is actually a very powerful tool for the prosecution to then sift through and, inform their prosecution of the client. And so for defense attorneys, they unfortunately receive a lot of this information last minute. Once again, it's very excessive. It's very hard to go through. It's not clearly categorized labels. And prosecutors often don't have an obligation to actually tell the defense attorney which part of, these hundreds of hours of calls am I actually going to focus on. So that's essentially what the jail calls are referring to.
And going back to the reporter's question, one of the amazing things about the move from JusticeText to Thomson Reuters is, in addition to the Thomson part, we have the Reuters part. And the journalists in Reuters are extremely interested in how tools like CoCounsel can be used to process large quantities of data, to find things, surface things that are important for people to know. And my team, the innovation team, is regularly talking with people at Reuters about what might be possible. So yeah, it's a place we're actively experimenting.
Yeah, and I would say the same for Describe. One of our actually target audiences are journalists, because most journalists do not work in environments where they can afford really expensive tools. So something like this is very helpful for people researching all sorts of different kinds of stories.
And one of the flip sides of that that's helpful to journalists, but not journalists themselves, is responding to FOIA requests or Freedom of Information Act requests, where for years a pain point of many journalists is getting governments to respond in any kind of a timely way to a FOIA request, and using generative AI. Some governments are beginning to use it to help identify the information that's responsive to the request more quickly and be able to produce it more quickly. So that's been a real development.
So hopefully a quick question, which is the prior panel really, one of the pieces was the removing the procedural barriers to the appeals court and making it possible for people to file briefs that actually were not kicked out of the appeals court. But the other piece is the substantive piece, which is that people have no clue what to actually argue. So the real question is twofold. One is these tools are great for people like myself who are in legal aid or law firms or lawyers, but for people who don't have access, one of the things I was just wondering is as a people are going to be throwing their things into ChatGPT and saying, hey, give me the answer. Would Thomson Reuters or other firms be able to at least say, feed me what you're putting into the court and I'll tell you if it's junk, if it's all hallucinations? It just is like a little bit of help for all those millions of people that are unrepresented who are going to be throwing junk at the court and just need a little help to say you're on the wrong track.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So Thomson Reuters serves lawyers specifically, right? Our products are aimed at professionals, and that actually gives us a certain degree of freedom, because we know that these are experts, and we know that they're going to have the time to engage in training on how to avoid the worst case scenarios. As a kind of legal technology buff, outside of wearing my Thomson Reuters hat, I think that there is a lot of potential in terms of taking what people know about the law and turning it into more structured forms, and then using those structured data forms to help build tools like you're describing. So it would not be outside of the realm of possibility that something like a tertiary resource inside a Thomson Reuters database about an area of law could be converted into something that an LLM could consume as a basic understanding of what's relevant in this area of law, and then use that as information to critique a pro se application and say, oh, actually, you have to prove one of these three things, and your paper doesn't prove any of them. So there's a lot of potential there. I think there's work to be done in terms of taking that sometimes implicit knowledge and turning it into something that it's easier to automate around. But it's certainly a point of potential.
Can I chime in there? Because I think a big missed opportunity is not, I think it's maybe asking too much of the public to become lawyers. And actually, they know the story of their case better than anyone. And that is usually the biggest thing that the courts need from them. And I know that from when I was an assistant attorney general and had to handle a number of cases with, against a pro se litigant. And the court really is looking to them to tell their story. And actually, they often have a lot of evidence. And they know if given the right tools, they could put that evidence into a format that the court can understand and the court can process. So actually, we've seen a number of folks. We don't focus on the public. We also focus on practitioners, but we've had pro se folks sign up for Clearbrief. And what they use it for is for telling their story, because they can drag in their evidence, the text messages, that sort of thing, and then write and use our add facts site button, and it'll make a site for them. And I think that's what a really interesting area to focus on, because it's just very, very difficult. Even lawyers struggle to interpret the law and organize the law. Let's help them organize their story.
Yeah, and a shameless plug for an organization I'm part of. There's about 50 companies or so in a group called the Justice Technology Association. If folks haven't heard of them, they have a lot of products on the very cutting edge of direct-to-consumer legal help. So definitely check it out. And we just launched our new website about 2 days ago. So check it out.
Yeah, there's a company I wrote about recently that I was playing around with their thing a little bit. It's called AI.law, and it's more focused on the small firm and self-represented litigants end of the market. And basically, it's similar to what Jackie was saying. I mean, you can kind of go in and describe a factual scenario, and it will tell you what causes of action you have based on that scenario. And then you can press a couple buttons and generate a complaint based on what you've just described. Or if you've been served with a complaint, you can go in and analyze that complaint, the causes of action, generate an answer if you want. Just from playing around a little bit, it's actually not bad. I mean, again, you kind of need the lawyer in the equation at some point on that, but I think those kinds of things may come down into that market. I think, do we have time for one more question maybe? Or
yeah, I can combine two from online.
Okay.
In regards to questions of bias, such as the things that Quinten mentioned in his presentation about gender bias and stuff that's baked into the models, and also about responsible use of these models, what dangers do you see, and how do you see addressing them when you either, in whichever your segment is, either with use of professionals or of these tools by non-professionals? So bias and historic data, I guess. Just, solve it like that, big problem,
Just solve bias.
Just solve bias.
Yeah, I mean, that's a particular problem in the criminal justice sector. Devshi, have you thought about that? Or
Yeah, I think once again, AI is a really big word. Generative AI is, I think, what a lot of us have been talking about, but there are other forms of machine learning which haven't been used in the most ethical manners within the criminal justice space. I think just to name a few, there's, predictive policing tools, there's facial recognition technology, all of which would disproportionately harm people of color. I think generative AI is dealing with its own set of challenges when it comes to bias, but I think it's taking a different form. But when it comes to the criminal justice system in particular, I will say, a lot of the agencies that we work with, John Bartleson is an incredible example of someone who lives as, a technology professional within the government, who can vet the things that we're saying, who can ask us for the deep dive into our technical architecture, who can align the agency's priorities with whatever, different tech vendors are providing. But a lot of government agencies don't necessarily have that, or at least a lot of public defenders. And there aren't a lot of mechanisms for public oversight over the tools that are being adopted, and so, including JusticeText. And so I think when it comes to bias, there isn't one answer, but I do think as more firms and particularly public agencies start adopting these tools, we are going to need to make sure that there's technology professionals within these agencies that can monitor and be responsible for the application of the technology, and mechanisms for public oversight on how the tools are being used.
Great. Any other thoughts on bias issue?
Yeah, there was a paper, and I can't remember the citation, but it came out a few weeks ago, I think, and it was talking about how the generative models can demonstrate bias. If you ask something like ChatGPT what someone should be sentenced to for a certain offense, the answer may differ in a predictable way based on how racialized the offender's last name was, or it might be affected by patterns of speech in a transcript record, or even a description of a socioeconomic class. So there's a lot of potential inputs that could be difficult to predict and would result in difficult to detect biases on the other side. So we're keenly aware of these things, and honestly, one of the ways that we approach this problem is by telling the clients that we work with in the innovation department, that's a bad idea, we won't do that. because there are just no certain categories of bias. It's just impossible to measure that it's not there. And if the outputs are sufficiently important, we just say that the risk is too high to use it for that purpose. Let's do something that we can verify against facts. But another interesting thing is that when we are in the process of kind of developing prototypes about what an LLM might do, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is what might a person do with this tool that it wasn't designed for. And so the human tendency to want to use a tool just because it exists, even if it was designed for a different purpose, is one of the things that we have to keep in mind. It's like, we're not going to give you a thing that would be perfect and safe for task A if it would be dangerous for task B, and we can't stop you from using it that way. So there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah, and I would say, just to put on an academic hat for a moment, academics tend to stay in their silos. So I think anyone in this space needs to really think about all the innovation and the work that's being done on bias in AI in other organizations. For example, there's a great group called the Algorithmic Justice League. There's experts right here in Boston. So making sure, speaking to entrepreneurs in particular, that the work we're doing is connected to that larger ecosystem so that we're not recreating problems over and over again.
Great.
And, oh, can I just I wanted to give a real example of how, as a product leader, I'm thinking about this. And, one of the things that Clearbrief does, right, is it will score how well the source supports your sentence. And that's one of our patents that we hold, that it does a semantic similarity analysis that's, flagging, hey, it seems like this source might not prove what you're saying. But we can't always guarantee that there's not some nuance there that the AI didn't understand. And initially we had that visually coded as a red 1 bar compared to the full green bars. And we found from talking with users that they just reacted so strongly to the red that they took, and this is something that's been documented in countless studies, that I think there's studies around how sentencing guidelines have been used by judges, that when you get something from technology, you tend to defer to it, as though it's God. And so taking that feedback into account, that it was too strong of a signal to put the red for users, we changed that so that it's a gentle orange. and the orange is just, hey, it's flagging for your attention. Use your human judgment. It seems like it may not be as clear to the reader that what you were citing supports this. Maybe you could reword your sentence, but it's that kind of, design thinking. I think that's why it's really important to, support diverse companies that are bringing different perspectives into the product development process, as that's how we're going to end up with products that reduce bias.
And if I can just add one extra thing on bias, I always like to remind people that it is a risk in the use of large language models and in machine learning generally. But there are also some pretty wonderful papers that have been written out there by people who used machine learning tools to find bias in human beings. So they were able to analyze the outcomes of certain tribunals and say decisions in this tribunal are being made not on the basis of the facts, but on the basis of whether the person was represented and how long the docket was that day, and all of these other factors that were statistically more likely to matter. So there's pluses and minuses. It can be used as a tool to fight bias as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much to all the panelists. I think that is our time, and I really appreciate it.
All right, so here's where we get to sort of look behind the curtain a little. We had, as you noticed, we are not on schedule. This is a first. I think it's the first time in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years where we have not been on schedule. But we always plan ahead. So actually, this interactive session has a little bit of wiggle room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very abbreviated version of what you're going to get. And I'm going to let you go and do some stuff. And then that will go right into lunch. See how we planned it all perfectly. So for the folks online, I don't want you to go anywhere. I'm going to drop a link right now. Well, I guess I do want you to go somewhere. I'm going to drop a link that's going to allow you to go to breakout rooms to do this same exercise online. For everyone here, let's just do a really quick move to the interactive exercise. So we had alluded to in the email you got before you arrived today and in my opening remarks this morning about using a certain online tool that we had made. And we had given you some ways to access that. And so now this is where we figured something out. How many people were able to download that tool and to get it to do something? I just need 5 people. I just need 5 people. 10 people. Oh, 1%. Oh, I needed like 5 of you so you could be team captains. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dangle a carrot in front of you. I think upstairs I have some old, beanie caps with the old Suffolk logo, which, as you now know, is a collector's item. And I have some old stickers. So what we'll ask is so if people online, people here, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to show you some tools, and then you can email me at litlab@suffolk.edu with the output of what we're about to do. And then at our reception today, after the eclipse, while we're having some drinks upstairs, we'll review some of those in, and we'll pick a winner. I don't know how we're going to do that yet. I'll figure it out. We'll pick a winner, and they'll get some of those hats and beanies. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. If you go to our agenda, you will see at this section, the interactive exercise, again, a call for you to download this this extension, the lit prompts extension. And what this allows you to do is, I don't want to say that you can create your own legal AI company in 5 minutes, but you probably could. Because what this does is this allows you to sort of take some of the stuff that you've seen today and actually get your hands dirty. And so I'm just going to show you really quick what that means. Once you have this working, and remember the slide deck here has the key you will need to paste in. So that's that thing that's going to let you get to, it's this thing here. You can just cut and paste into that thing. And what it allows you to do, let me just show you. You can edit prompts, these things that we've been talking about for LLMs, right here in this browser extension. So here is a good one. Summarize and question this page. The thing that this lets you do is it lets you take in data from your web browser. So this instruction here allows the following activity. You know what I love about live demos is live demos are really a bad idea. But we've had quite a few of them today, and they've all worked wonderfully. So here we are, something about, you know, I have an account, but let's see actually if this can get around the paywall by doing this too. Let's summarize the page here. Okay, got around the paywall. Yeah. We have an account here at Suffolk. It's one of the great perks of being one of the things. I get this, I get the Washington Post. Okay, so what this has done is it has taken the text on the page and made a summary based upon that little prompt that I wrote. And now I can ask it questions. When will peak be? I don't know, that's not a very well phrased question, but let's see if it gets it. He does not provide specific information. It does tell us about Mexico and exactly, so it doesn't know where I am, but it gave me some times. What I've done is I've created with just this text, I've been able to say, hey, basically fit the entire page text in there. And then I just give, in this case, we're using one of the OpenAI models, just give me a summary. What I'm going to do is this, because we don't have time to do much more. There is a series that I wrote on how to use this tool with a whole bunch of different use cases, like summarize a web page. That's what you all just did. This one allows me to summarize a document, which is one of the things that was suggested by some of the speakers up here. Say, feed it a fact, and then give it some questions. Here's one where you can simulate client interactions. I have this one actually based upon my experience as a public defender at CPCS. John's a Suffolk Law grad, by the way. This actually simulates simulated experience with interacting with the client. I saw on Bob's, Bob wrote up something about a law student who had simulated a gunner in class so they could do kind of stuff. I simulated a professor. So now you've got this robot Socrates, which actually will involve you in a Socratic dialogue. So your challenge, go through in the next couple of minutes find the people next to you, hopefully someone maybe who's got the key working, and play around with these things, and then try to build something, and then share it with us back at litlab at suffolk.edu. And I think that you can do that while you're eating too. And so we'll just absorb that into the food time. So that was quite a change in schedule. But if you email, and think about it this way, if only one of you enters, you're going to get the hats. Okay? Do it as a team too. Please don't make a team like more than 5, because I don't think I have more than 5 hats. All right. I believe there's food. We'll be back after people have eaten some for our wonderful keynote.